And so he was a small fish. He was doing 600,000 a year. I think we started working with him in 2019, early 2019. And at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, I think it was this beginning of this year, he was on route to doing around 1.6. He's on route to doing around 2 million now. So that's massive for home service. Think about it.
When it comes to success, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The journey to the top is filled with roadblocks, bumps, and U-turns. And what better way to fast-track this venture than by learning from the best? Welcome to Breaking It Down with Yogin Patel.
All right. So for those of you listening, today we have Marko. And, Marko is a successful 19-year-old entrepreneur with multiple businesses, including a digital marketing agency called Intricate Digital, as well as a contractor business called Allstate Concrete Coatings. Marko, it's good to have you on, my guy. What's been kind of new with you, man?
It's a pleasure. I mean, there's always a lot of things going on. Just focusing on two different businesses. I don't want to make it seem like, being too spread out, because you're going to ultimately end up spinning wheels in all of them,
Right.
And so obviously the digital marketing is busy. It's client work. And then I'm looking to get more into home service. And when I say home service, it means contracting or construction companies, as people would call it. And so I'm sure you're a little bit new to you. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. I want to start with your childhood, where you were born in the States, and kind of how your upbringing was like. So if you want to touch on that.
Yeah. So I was born and raised here in Phoenix, specifically Cape Creek. So it was North Phoenix area. So it's certainly not, it's an area of town where, everybody's more spread out. Your neighbors are, 100 yards away, not next door. So I would say my upbringing was pretty normal in a middle class family here in Arizona. A quick fact about me, I'm 19, right? I probably lived in 20 houses. So we were always moving around. It's kind of interesting. We're always moving around, moved to Washington twice, went there for 4 years, came back to Phoenix, different house, went back there for a couple more years. So my parents were always moving every 2 years, it felt like. So that was interesting, but it's, everything I've done has always been, not following anybody's footsteps by any means, but it certainly has been, supported by my family. And I think that's always good to hear,
100%. Yeah. I mean, is there any moments, you can kind of recall in your childhood that, would say that have shaped you to where you are right now?
Not particularly, but I have to say, my mother is really, really hardworking, right? And just everything she does, she's not going to give up. There's a perfect example is garden weeds. I know it's stupid to bring this up, but garden weeds, we had a massive garden in Washington. And in order to be successful with that garden, you always need to be pulling those weeds, or else the crop is never going to grow, or it's going to be taken over by weeds. And so we would be always out there weeding this garden day in, day night. And it's just very aggressive. And in order to have success in anything, it's just, you got to be very skilled at it, but you also need to grind at it, and do the right thing.
Yeah. I've noticed, following you on Instagram for the last few months, you definitely have this sort of discipline that, a lot of entrepreneurs may wish that they had, right? Discipline is something that we see across, everywhere, that is hard to achieve. And I know you're doing the 75-day hard challenge with Andy Frisella. So, talk to me about discipline and how you've been able to kind of, get there.
Well, what's interesting, Yogin, that you bring that up, because I posted it on my Instagram. I try to do it every day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's 75 hard. It's actually my third time doing it. So I'm not.
Oh, wow. Got it.
To be honest with you, it certainly isn't the most simplest thing to do, but it certainly is I would call it a transformation program versus a fitness challenge or any of these other things that people might want to put a label on it. But speaking of discipline on it, like it really takes grit and hard work to stay to like that program, if you will, alongside trying to lead people and try to build companies. Like it's a lot of work. And so basically, in my opinion, what it does is it kind of opens up your schedule. When you stop doing all the bull crap stuff and you're not going to parties and all these other things, like you realize how much time you really have. And so with that being done, like you start spending more time on your business, and people would say, oh, it takes up too much of my life or whatever in the beginning. But I think people will quickly realize that it actually opens up your calendar. You can spend more time with your family and you can spend more quality time with your business too. And so that's what it's kind of done for me. But it's massive. I mean, it's not only is it good for fitness, it's good for personal, and it's also good for business. I mean, it's really just a one-stop shop. What have you done that? Is there any experience you've had with 75 Hard?
I really have wanted to start. Personally, I feel like there's so many different tasks and challenges with 75 Day Hard that I haven't been able to fully figure out with my day to day. But you know, I've done some things similar where I read Atomic Habits by James Clear last year, and that was a game changer for my life because, you know, for a long time, like I would always make excuses to get in the gym, and I realized like, hey, I just need to start figuring out, you know, environmental changes that I can do to start working out a little bit more. So I bought, you know, a standing desk with a treadmill attached, and just started using that every day. And so, you know, small little changes like that have been huge for me. But yeah, man, I think it's pretty amazing what you're doing. Like I see you posting every single day, and it's inspiring for sure. I mean, I think you're at day like 65 right now, or what?
Yeah, 67.
67. Got it.
So just a few more days left, and like I said, it's, you know, there's more than just like doing the program, you know. Right. But do you see what I'm talking about when you dedicate a certain amount of time, which is 2 45-minute workouts? Let's talk about it for a second. 2 45-minute workouts, one outdoor, one indoor. It can't be convenient, so it can't be like all over at the same time, because that's the whole point here. The workouts need to be separate, and when you kind of block out your day like that, in my opinion, it kind of opens up your calendar for things in between. Because if you just look at what you're doing, if you're not doing any exercise or anything like that, or you're not reading the book during the day, just organically, all of a sudden your day's just gone, you know? So when you start thinking about it in that perspective, I feel like it kind of opens up the calendar, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, you're totally right.
It's been,
yeah. I think, yeah, I've been seeing a lot of entrepreneurs personally doing that challenge. And so it has grown in the industry quite a bit. You know, personally, even my trainer, who I work with at the gym, like he's been doing that challenge as well. So, I want to kind of touch on, you know, how you kind of got introduced to the world of digital marketing. So, you know, what was that like? And was that something you always wanted to do? Have you always seen that as like a career option for you growing up? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I kind of walked into it unknowingly, to be honest with you. So kind of like the background here, you know, I went to, when we're moving so much, I was in 2 different high schools, 9th grade in a different high school, 10th grade in a different high school. And then I decided to do the early college thing, 11th grade and 12th grade. And that was to kind of be like, okay, you know, the general consensus is like, I was already into websites and that kind of stuff, but it wasn't producing anything. So I was like, this isn't really a career. And so I was like, hey, look, let's see if we get a career going here. And I kind of went the medical route through, you know, 11th grade and 12th grade in college. So like all my prereqs were taken for particularly nursing and nurse practitioner. So I was kind of the idea was to go that way in schooling, the traditional route. So I did end up getting my 2-year degree as an associate's degree, just from the 11th and 12th grade. So that kind of like fast tracked everything, you know, because obviously you didn't finish high school per se. You still graduated, but you didn't finish like the full 4 years there, or some would call full 4 sentences at a high school. So that's kind of how that went. And then, you know, obviously if you're working on something long enough and you're working at the right things, you're networking with the right people, you can start making some money from digital marketing, right? And so that's when I sort of started to make some cash, and I was like, hey, look, this could be an actual business. And I was probably like, I'm young for my age, so 17. So that's really when I started to get the LLC going, and really just, have the clients start coming in, and create programs, create packages. As far as like being influenced in the marketing space as well, I mean, there's a couple of people, my cousin has always been in this space, and a lot of friends who have obviously made it in this space. And so you got to know the right people if you want to fast track and stuff like that. Does that kind of help on the background there?
Yeah. I mean, if you could touch on a little bit specifically within digital marketing, because it really is a huge landscape. I mean, you could be doing, programmatic to SEO, to web design, like all that. So what is it specifically that you focus on?
Yeah. So the focus coming in was SEO. Like I was astonished by how SEO worked. So that was like years ago, and it was a lot easier to rank than it is now, in my opinion. But I originally got into space by creating a couple different sites, having writers, and I wrote a couple myself, on topics, and then obviously, ranking organically, and then trying to monetize it through affiliates and stuff like that. So I came into the digital marketing space through, I guess you could say, affiliate marketing and SEO. And then when I realized, I was like, hey, look, if I can do SEO for myself and be pretty successful at it at a smaller scale, then I can probably do, these services for clients. And that's where I kind of started with the clients, was SEO. Like literally all the clients we have right now at Intricate are on SEO. Like we hardly offer just paid services. It's usually SEO and other things, or just SEO. So that, I would say, that was kind of the first thing that I got into. But slowly progressed into different things. So PPC, advertising, Facebook's obviously massive. And anything basically that a local home service company could benefit if we were to do their marketing online.
Got it. What were those initial first, resources that you utilized to kind of learn about, SEO and, PPC?
I mean, there's a lot of different things out there, and you can kind of get lost in the mud when there's just like tons of resources and stuff like that. If I were to go back, I'd probably go through a couple different courses and then learn it myself, right? So for example, I'd probably go through the Ahrefs course on just SEO beginners. Like that was obviously really cool to see. But frankly, like I don't remember any like exact things, you know what I'm saying? Like I kind of just like got a website going on WordPress, knew a little bit of code, and then, just started messing around with it, indexing it, seeing how articles were indexed, how long did they take, getting backlinks. So I kind of like knew the terms, and I just started doing things. So I don't know. There's two different ways to learn, but I would definitely recommend like tools. If it's a good tool and they have good resources, whether it's YouTube or a course, I would definitely go with that over some randoms course,
Right. And so would you say you're actively doing SEO currently? Is that like a big portion of the agency?
Yeah, we do SEO. It's big. We primarily focus on local. So local SEO for, let's say, your local roofer, your roofer's looking to rank better on Google or Bing. We certainly do that. And it's a big chunk of what we do, probably 25%.
Got it. And what would you say overall with local SEO? I feel like SEO has changed so much over the years, and what it was in 2010 to 2012 to now, it's so different. When you onboard a new client, what do you have to tell them? What sort of expectations do you have to lay out?
Yeah. So, the first thing is you have the old expectation, which is still true. It takes a long time, right? You're not going to rank overnight unless you're doing some black hat stuff. So that's obviously massive. Is you need to set the expectation that if you run ads, you could have calls tomorrow. If you do SEO, you're going to have calls in 3 months, Now, as far as like what it really takes and the investment, in order to do SEO properly, I think in 2021, going into 2022, considering like the recent updates that came out from Google, which is obviously the biggest search engine, I think we've all realized that, and I've came to the conclusion that SEO is about more of authority. And so if Google can trust you in a certain field, let's say you're a roofer or you're a plumber, if they trust you as a plumber, as a local plumber, and you have backlinks that show that are quality, not built, that I certainly think you can rank better on Google than anyone else. Let's say your roofer tries to post some plumbing stuff, like it's just not, there's no authority there. There's no contextual authority that can back your statements. And so it's harder to rank for that, obviously, right? And so I think it's more about authority versus trying to trick the algorithm. I certainly think there's things you could still do though, like building schema, and we don't need to get too much into specifics here, but I think there's a lot of things we do on the daily basis that help our clients get results. That's why we're in business. And so I think that's the way we're going. It is more content, more authority on that content. I guess there's no two ways about it anymore. If you see like number one rankings, all of them have backlinks,
Right.
They all have methods, link mentions. And so it's getting very competitive out there,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. What would you say, is something that people can do if they're just trying to naturally increase their, rank in the search engines?
With no investment?
Let's say they have maybe $500 to $1,000 laying around.
And you're talking about like a local business.
Yeah. Let's stick with the home service.
If they're a home service company and they're a smaller guy, I would just make sure that you have a solid website. Like that's a one-time thing. If it's not a scammy agency. So I think you should just get a website, have it fast, have it mobile. Like the mobile usability is good. Once you have that good foundation set up, it's just like building a house. You have the foundation now, the walls and the roofs just got to go on if you want to have it function right. And so again, if you have that smaller investment, I probably wouldn't try and invest in your own time to learn SEO, because that's a waste of time on your part. You're a plumber or you're a roofer, you should focus on providing a quality service. Half of them don't even have a really good service right now. So I think focusing on that is going to win you more business than learning SEO. So frankly, I think having that good website is step one. Step two is just, talking to people like me. And then if we're not the right solution for you at the current moment in time, we definitely give you some insights on what should be done right now,
Got it. Are there any clients or any case studies that you can kind of talk about where you've been able to, take them from this level of results on the search engines or traffic wise to, maybe something astronomical?
Yeah, no, massive one. It's funny that you bring that up. So McCollum's full service, and it's totally open to talk about this just because it's actually a case that we built out. And so he was a small fish. He was doing 600,000 a year. I think we started working with him in 2019, early 2019. And at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, I think it was beginning of this year, he was en route to doing around 1.6. He's en route to doing around 2 million now. So that's massive for home service. Think about it. He was probably making not very much at 600,000 because you got fixed overhead, you got trucks on the road. It's hard to be profitable at that size. Once you kind of break that hump, and you're doing $2 million, you become that much more profitable, but also that much more big. You're providing double the amount of jobs and careers. You have that many more trucks on the road. You have that much more for marketing investment. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does 5 million in a few years, And so that was massive. It was going from ranking on like the 30th page to first page on every keyword, and also running some advertising on the web. So that was massive.
Yeah, that's huge. What was that time period?
So that was 2019 to today, like present. It's still client today.
Okay. And when was like the initial, like you started seeing results, you started seeing the website start moving up in the SR?
I would say probably 6 months into it. So it certainly is an investment. Another really good case study is obviously All-State Concrete Coatings, which I obviously own. But I mean, really what we do is we just go ham with marketing because there's no marketing budget per se. We just kind of spend because we want to spend. And that's a big case study too.
Got it. And I know you do PPC. So what are you currently doing in that realm, and what are you sort of offering to your clients?
Yeah, with PPC, if clients are a little bit on the edge about marketing at the end of the day, we would put them on PPC for probably 60 and 90 days. And they'll see how we can get some initial wins, and they can gain trust and gain perspective on what it really takes to be successful online. And so I think that's massive, is PPC really allows you to give the ability to just run ads momentarily, see it start to work, and then provide an upsell. So that was massive. We still do that to this day. The hope is, though, you don't just have clients on just PPC. You want to make sure you create an all-inclusive package that has better retention and stuff like that. So that's massive. I mean, within PPC, obviously Google Ads, Google search ads for local businesses are going to be the most profitable. But again, you can start looking at ads like YouTube and display and different platforms that we've definitely dabbled in as well,
Got it. Okay.
That's massive though. I mean, search ads I don't know what the statistics are, but there's so many people spending on search ads. Like, you could probably take an average small business and put a price tag on it,
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because I mean, I come from the world of Facebook advertising, Snapchat, and you're in a very different playing field with a lot of these marketers that you see online now. A lot of people are not focused as much on SEO or Google, and it's cool to talk to you about that because you obviously see the massive upside that you're bringing for your clients. What have you noticed that have been some really big changes overall in the last few years? I mean, you started at age 17. It's 2 years later. So what was that entire process like?
Well, before we move on to that one, I'd like to mention something about the Google Ads versus Facebook, or just Google Ads and Facebook, because I don't like to do first. I think you should spend on both platforms, right? Google, if it's a home service company, is more like it's a higher quality lead. And so the contractor doesn't need to spend as much time on follow-up and nurturing that lead and closing that lead ultimately. So they think it's a lot more high quality. So myself as a digital marketing owner and a construction or a concrete coating company owner, I understand that we should advertise on both. Now with Google, our conversion rates might be higher. However, the conversion cost is much higher than Facebook. Now on Facebook, if we run ads, which we do, we spend more on Facebook. The reason being is because we have the system in place to close that business too. Like, if you were just to run a Facebook ad and not have any sort of funnel or any sort of sequence, any sort of price conditioning, like, there would be no reason to run that Facebook ad, because you get the ad, somebody fills it out, the team calls them, nobody answers, and then they just throw it out and say it was a low quality lead. So my point is you have to have the full shebang, the full system, to price condition them, to keep them in the, to nurture them, just like an email list. And once that happens, usually they pick up the phone, you could schedule an appointment, and they're a high quality lead at that point. So I think they're pretty equal in terms of if you have the right system on Facebook, So anyways, you're talking about 17 to now, like, I guess what were you asking there?
Yeah, just overall, the changes that you've seen across the industry, and maybe any challenges that have come along the way.
Yeah. Well, I've seen, even like before 17, like 15, 16, like, 4 or 5 years ago, it was, I don't want to say it was simple, but it was pretty easy, let's put it that way, to build niche sites without a lot of authority on each one of those sites. Like like niche authority. I'm talking like if you're in motorcycles, you're motorcycles, right? You're not automotive, you're motorcycles, like that niche, right? Or if you're drones, or if you're technology, you got to be tech radar. But if you're drones, you're drones. You know what I'm saying? So you got to have that niche authority. So what I've noticed, anyways, is it was from anybody writes anything to niche only, if that makes sense. And so, or sorry, anybody writes anything to niche only if you want to still win, right? Now, let's say you're right now in 2021, you're writing about anything and everything. You're probably a big corporation. Now, if you're writing about anything and anyone, you're an individual publishers, then you're probably not making anything. Based on what I've noticed, so you're kind of spinning wheels, but I don't know. That's something I've noticed anyways, is massive shift in the affiliate marketing space, where you used to be able to do product reviews on anything, and now it's really specific, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I think if you're niche specific, you can become the go-to or micro influencer in that specific space, and you can monetize it really well. You just got to make a lot of videos. You got to make tons of posts. You just got to be the all-in-one source for that thing, So it's certainly not a bad thing. It's just a massive shift that you really need to realize if you want to make progress in this market,
Got it. And how did you kind of get into the home service sort of industry? Why was that kind of your initial calling, per se?
Yeah. So I have like big dreams, obviously, right? And there's a company out there. It's called Neighborly Brands, and you drive in Phoenix. You live here. You probably see this maybe 1 in 100, which is a lot considering how many local businesses are out there. 1 in 100 wraps probably is Neighborly. That's just a guess, So like, they're big. Neighborly Brands does probably 2.2 billion. I think they did 2.2 billion last year. So it's a big network of home service companies. Now, it's not like an association. It's actually a holding company for all these home service companies.
Wow.
And so I kind of like that model, and it's obviously not easy to build, and you shouldn't try to build all of them at once. But I have to say that kind of influenced me to get into it, because if you look at those types of models, or anybody who's doing that on a smaller scale, they are very, very good at two things. They're really good at operations, and they're really good at sales and marketing. And so if you could pair those two things together, you can create really big home service companies. Now, companies that do 10 plus million, if you're in the right market. And so I think if you go back to like Allstate Coatings and kind of like what I'm trying to accomplish there, yeah, sure, I'm fairly good at marketing and sales. And then, my business partner is good at operations in a home service company. And so that pair hopefully is going to create a big company. Now, if you break down operations, because maybe some people don't know this, I like to look at it as like actual like fulfillment of the jobs and communication with the office, but also like being able to provide a really good customer service so people come back. Because in any business, it's not just you never want to be in the business of doing one thing and done. Like, you want your lifetime value good, and so we want to obviously win referrals, but we also want them to choose us for their driveway coatings or patio coatings or pool coatings, or when they move to a new house. Like, on average, people move every 5 or 6 years. So we want to make sure that we can win their business when they move as well, right? And do their next garage or their rental properties garage. And so I think it's massive to have that good operations, good customer service in a home service company. Back to the goals though, like, I want to get obviously Allstate Coatings big. And then once it can kind of sustain itself and I can kind of step away from overseeing like everything, if you will, I'd like to potentially start another home service company, maybe painting. I kind of look at the things that are easier to get into, that don't take, like $100,000 machine per se. Like, obviously grinders are 15,000, 20,000, but they're easier to get started with, right? It's lower barrier to entry. But once you get bigger, it's harder for people to get bigger because you have a big market share. And so I don't know. I think the overall goal is to get into different to different business models within home service, but I don't know when that is though, Yogin. Like, I don't know if 5 million is the number or 10 million is the number or what it is before you get into another one. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, having talked to a few different entrepreneurs that have had successful exits, I feel like it doesn't stop. Sometimes it's like you get this money, you relax for a little bit, and then, you still have that urge to get back into something. So, it's just kind of a person by person, but.
Right. Well, when I'm talking about like getting into another one, because I mean, obviously, like if you don't want to deal with it, then you exit. If you are fine with dealing with it, you can set up systems and step away, then that's good too. Now you got to make sure that you're not spinning wheels in that first entity before you create another one, And so if you're doing big numbers and you can step away and it's still doing big numbers and there's leaders and careers within that company, then I think you can kind of step away and maybe create the painting company you wanted to create, or create whatever it was that you wanted to create, But I've always thought that the two right now are a really, really good fit though, because the marketing, obviously, the marketing agency improves my skills on marketing, which is really going to help my endeavors with home service too. So that two pair is just like perfect,
Mm-hmm. Well, let's kind of touch on some of the challenges as a business owner, right? I feel like, it's crazy to talk to you because you're so young and like, you really just kind of got started in the last 2 years. What is the process, or what is the major challenges you faced being so young and also growing a successful company?
The biggest thing, to be honest with you, is just not wanting to talk to anyone, and you really can't do anything if you don't want to talk to people. And so I've always had, like, obviously I'm an introvert, but I don't want to say that's harder to be successful if you're an introvert, because it probably isn't. But I guess my point is in networking groups, in BNIs and stuff like that, I was always just avoiding conversation, right? And the more you do that, the harder it's going to be. I'll tell you what, it's going to be that much harder. And so if you're the person who, and I'm just saying this because I kind of thought about it, if you're the person who walks into a BNI group and you instantly, and I say BNI just because it's a very, it's not clicky, but it's very like everybody knows each other. So you're the one person who walks in and you don't know anyone, right? And so if you can walk into that and instantly know everybody in there, and they all know you and you provide value to them and they provide value to you, whether it's BNI or not, and you're that type of person, you'll be very successful. You just got to get on you got to get on a train that's moving, that's doing that, so you can put your efforts to work. But I just wasn't that person, right? So it was very, and it still is difficult. Like if I need to make that phone call, like I'll push it off for a little bit, I don't know, just those types of things that require talking to people. Because I like to mind my own business, right? And so those things are kind of like, you battle those every day, And so I think certainly that's been the hardest thing. But learning and picking up on things have always been easy. I've always been like a quick learner, quick starter, and take initiative and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of like made up for what the weakness is there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, a lot. I feel like a lot of people go through that. What have you noticed with, growing your, employee base, right? And growing a team. What has that kind of process been like as well?
It's been fun. It's been difficult, but it's been fun because you can't do anything about your age, right? You can only build trust with people and build relationships and have people trust you, And so the reason why I'm saying it's been difficult is because it's hard to get people on board with someone who's very younger than them or just younger than them in general. And so you have to be genuine. You have to be you got to be straight to the point. You can't be beating around the bush on certain points. And when people trust you, then it gets easier, And so, when people start to realize that you're not messing around, if you will, on business, then it gets easier, if you will. I don't know if I'm just blowing smoke, but it's been pretty tough in the beginning. But once you kind of get the ball rolling and you have other people to support you, and you use other people's networks as trust. For example, like my business partner in the coding company, which, by the way, I would never be able to do it without a business partner. So don't try to think you can do things by yourself or do a lot of things by yourself. But I mean, I owe all the respect to him because he's been in the industry for many, many years. And when I say industry, I mean painting industry and just home service space for many years. And he's able to cultivate an audience, but cultivate a team around him, so we can build a team and we can grow this company bigger and better. And so I think it's more than just leveraging who but also leveraging like who other people know. Just because if you're business partners, then obviously cultivating an audience or cultivating a team is much easier. If you don't, you gotta kind of partner with one of your main guys and be like, start talking. Who do they know? Who can we trust? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing because nowadays we live in a society where there's a lot of solopreneurs, and a lot of people don't like to collaborate. A lot of people, kind of like you said, like to stick with themselves. How do you go about that, right? Where do you go and look for, per se, like a business partner or maybe your first major hire? Do you have any guidance on that?
Yeah. Well, I think most people's first like major hire is usually people they know. And I think that's always a pretty good route to go. Just because when you get a couple of people, like I feel like it's like, okay, it's just another person. Right. And so as far as finding like new people, I would obviously leverage people who currently work with you. Let's say Bob works for you. He's production manager. Hey, Bob, who do you know? Do you have any cousins, friends, anybody in town that's looking to potentially have a career doing this? Stuff like that. I think it's massive because if you're not leveraging that, you're not getting the high quality ones the fastest. Because when you hire through online, of course, you're going to get high quality ones, but it's just going to take more time because you got to weed through resumes, you got to weed through interviews and stuff like that. So I would definitely leverage your employees network. And also obviously publishing online, that you're hiring and trying to find this type of person,
Got it. Okay. Now in the client-based business, right, you occasionally have times where you have to deliver some really, maybe not so great news to clients. Have you encountered those moments, and how do you typically go about situations like that?
Yeah, it's funny you bring it up. It happens all the time. And if you don't bring these things up, this is what, like, you agency owners, if you don't bring up the bad news to your clients, you're literally shooting yourself in the foot. Right. And I'll tell you why. Because if you don't, they're going to figure out sometime soon. Okay. And it's really just a ticking time bomb because now the clock is ticking T- when they're firing you, And so if you bring these things up, it's happened many times. We land clients because of this, right? You have to bring up these things. For example, if, say, for example, an email blast, right? Like this is just one that came straight to mind. An email blast. It didn't include the right things because there's miscommunication on the team, or maybe the client had a little bit of problems in it, or whatever it was, right? You as the leader needs to take full responsibility of that because 1, you didn't train your team to do it best, and 2, you didn't set the right expectations of the client. So it's your fault, right? So you got to obviously own it, first of all. Second of all, you got to communicate that to the client, because if you don't, this is the part that everybody skips out on. Like, they might own it, but they're not going to communicate the issue to the client. Whether the client's aware of it or not, I think bringing it up is only going to create peace of mind in the customer, but it's also going to create better retention. believe me, it's saved my butt many times. If something happens, you own it. You talk to the client about it. This is what happened. Take full responsibility for it. Here's what we're going to do moving forward. I've done it many times. It's happened too many times where I can't even remember a specific one.
What's your protocol? Do you email them right away? Do you shoot them a text? Do you call them?
Yeah. So here's one that just came to my mind. So a lot of our sites are on a specific WordPress platform, right? And there was a certain bug within it. And there was on a blog, like on a single blog post, a lot of them were aligned left. It was kind of odd. A lot of these blogs, just to give you context, you have the title, you have the image, and then obviously in the body section, all that content was aligned left. And really, I wasn't sure what was going on. Our team wasn't sure what was going on. And the more we're looking into it, we start thinking about what clients are probably looking at their sites. So we got to make sure we bring up some things here. And so that specifically, like a protocol on something like that, or a similar situation that obviously we caused, the client didn't cause, would be step one to internally own it yourself, right? And take responsibility for that. And then number two, I think you just need to go directly to communicating with the client, which is best. Like, let's say this client loves phone calls, I would call them. If this client doesn't pick up the phone ever, I'd probably email them, So just picking up the phone, hey client, build a little bit of a, back and forth talk, which you always do on phone calls like that. And then you get straight into the meat. Just telling them straight up what's happening, and give them peace of mind of what you're going to do moving forward. And it also creates talking points. A lot of agency owners might think that it's really hard to have ongoing conversations with their clients. But if let's say each month or something that maybe that's a little bit too much, but let's say like every month or two, there's something that comes up that's pretty big. That's certainly a talking point that you're taking responsibility for. It gives you more time to chat with the client, which creates more personability, more retention with that client, in my opinion, because there's no perceived indifference. They know that you're working and they know that your team is on the same page with them on their goals. And so it actually creates more, I guess, more retention at the end of the day, but that's massive, is just to communicate it to the client, whether it's email or phone. I'd recommend phone. To your question, like I would definitely recommend just picking up the phone and calling if it's home service, just because that's where they usually are. It's hard to catch those people on email. If you send them an email, they might open it, they might not open it. I find it easier to call.
I like that. Yeah, I feel like a lot of agency owners, and I mean just people in general, don't talk about some of like the dark sides of being an agency owner. Is like sometimes you have to have those difficult conversations, and they're not always easy. And in your example, it's kind of interesting because you're not even too sure whether that was totally your fault or not, right? And so you're owning up to something that it might not have even been something that you did. So that's kind of an interesting situation as well. But
so, I mean, as far as like to piggyback that, let's say the issue arises from a team member, right? And let's say it cost you some business. Maybe the client left, or maybe it's not allowed you to scale, or whatever the case is. Like maybe it's cost you a money sign, right? As a business owner, in my opinion, as long as it wasn't like immoral, right? Or as long as it was ethical, and it was just an accident or a mistake, I think it costs more for you to hire a new egg than to train that egg better, if that makes sense, because I mean, think about it. If this person's completely ethical, they own their mistake or whatever, and they just made an accident and it might have cost you money, and they realize that, I don't think it's right to let that person go because of one big or small mistake. I think it's easier said than done, but at the end of the day, I think it costs more to hire a new person who's just as good most of the time, right? You see where I'm coming from on that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. I think it's a lot better to have someone that stays with you a longer time and is loyal than to go out and find someone else and just replace them as soon as they make a mistake. It also creates a different type of culture within your organization now that people are, getting scared that they'll be fired if they, make some sort of mistake. So, um,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think all these conversations are really interesting because this happens for a lot of people. And you have to kind of juggle with the idea of what to do in those situations. Um, what would you say has been the biggest challenge with the home service business? Because I'm sure it's a lot different than running an agency that you can kind of run from, just your bedroom, right? So what is that like?
Gosh, I mean, I'm new to it. There's a lot of things. It's hard to juggle home service, and that's why I'm saying, like, if you can get it to a certain size, automate it, then start another home service company. Never start another one if you're yet to automate the first one, But I like to think of me as business before home service, and that's not bad. It's just you're thinking about sales and marketing and how to grow and scale this company, which in turn creates a really good customer service because you can't grow without that. What are the leads going to do or the sales going to do if nobody likes you, nobody can send referrals, Um, so I like to think of business before home service. And so in that regard, I don't know. I think fulfillment has been massive. I mean, you can't just continue to sell if your product isn't right. And now our product is right. Like we have our product down. We've spent hours and hours of time with suppliers and people who are much more knowledgeable of these products than I am, obviously. And so again, I think it takes doing your due diligence, but that main mistake, or not mistake, but just main like setback was, what product are we using and why are we using it? Because like in the coating space, there's a lot of products, right? There's epoxy, there's water-based like resin, there's obviously polyurea, polyaspartic, like there's tons of products out there for floor coatings, and you can't really just go with any of them because then your whole business model changes, if you will. And so again, it took us a while. Like I say, to setback because it took us a while to test different products and figure out what was best. So that was a massive setback. So I think like any home service, any business you start, like if you look at it from the outside, like what are other people struggling with? And it's hard to figure that out because you got to ask questions, right? So if you were to ask like Joe from this HVAC company, like what his struggles are, his are going to be different from this other person. So I think figuring out a lot of those things is going to help. But I don't know. I don't know if there's two ways about it with how we went. We just kind of tested different products and then we figured out the right one and then created a warranty around it and then went with it.
Talk about the like upfront cost of starting a business like this, right? It's a lot different than starting an agency. So yeah, if you can talk about that.
Yeah. So, home service companies versus agencies, like you hear stories, agencies starting with like $500 in a bank account, that comes to no surprise because all you need is a laptop and some internet connection, and then just a mouth to talk about your services, And so that's certainly a lot easier to get into, but that's why it's so crowded. That's why there's a lot of people in it and it's harder to break the noise, which is fine. Competition is good. But on the flip side with home service, the investment, depending on the business, there's a lot. I'll tell you for concrete coating, you just look at the basics, right? How are you going to get around? What's the transportation for your team? You're not going to do the work yourself. So what's the transportation? You need company trucks. That's one. Two, I'll tell you, company insurance and agencies is very cheap. Okay. Insurance on a concrete coating company or any contracting, HVAC, plumbing, roofing company. Talk about roofing. Roofing is like, it's the massive liability to have people on your roof. So you need big insurance. Now, insurance is just like a massive fixed expense for coating companies if you're getting started, right? obviously it's fixed, and over time it's going to be easier. So one, you got the trucks, you got the insurance. And again, make sure you got all the legalities in place. Like, don't do jobs unless you have insurance, right? And then three, you got the actual equipment, right? Like, we go back to digital marketing. You need a computer, right? And maybe a couple courses online. For coding, to actually produce money and produce jobs and produce sales, you need equipment. And this equipment, for my case anyways, was like grinders, right? There's grinders, there's tools. And these grinders, like, obviously you can cut corners and not grind, and you could just do acid etching or stuff like that. But again, that's not what we're trying to be. Our business is trying to be premier, superior to the other products out there. And so we want to grind every floor. So when we do that and make that promise to our customers, we're taking that investment upon ourselves, buying a 15, 20, there's grinders out there for $50,000, you know? And so that was a big chunk of change that has to go out the window if you want to start a business in that space. But I don't know, to answer your question, like, I think home service companies the barrier to entry is much higher, you know? Yeah, you got to know what you're doing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because, you know, home service, I personally haven't like dived too deep into it. And I think you're probably one of the first friends I have that is kind of in that specific field. I mean, man, what's kind of the horizon look like for you over the next 5 years? Are you going to be like scaling out the agency more, focusing a little bit more on the home service side of things? Any other goals?
Obviously, intricate in digital marketing, you could scale to, all it is you're building your monthly recurring revenue, right? And so the higher you get that, the bigger stage you're at, the more people you hire, bigger things you could do. I think there's a lot of things in that space that I'd like to do as well, as far as internal projects. For example, building association websites, stuff like that. On the coding side of things and home service, I think there's never an ending to that. You know, like, I think it's all about getting one company big enough, like I said, 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is, to where you can systematize it, step out, and potentially grow another one, if, you know, or work on the profitability of that current one if it's not there, you know. And so I guess the horizon on that, I'd love to go forever in home service, you know. I think it's such a great business model. I think it's always going to be around. Think of it. I mean, if the economy drops, people still need toilets, you know. If the economy drops, your certain type of clientele is still going to be getting garage coatings, you know. So it's really bulletproof in that regard too. But as far as horizon, I mean, there's coating company, painting company, HVAC company. There's a lot of things you could do. So I think in the next 5 years, I don't know, maybe I have another home service company, you know, not like 20, because then you're spinning wheels, but one doing really well, another one doing pretty good. And then obviously you got the agency stuff. I don't see that going away anytime soon.
Got it. You know, couple questions left before I move on to the rapid fire. I wanted to ask you, what does a normal day look like for you? Like morning to night?
Yeah. So right now it's a little bit different just because it's around the holidays. I'm really late, but anyways, on a normal week, on a normal day, usually what it looks like is in the morning, I'm into like sports, right? And so might not look like a basketball player, but I like to play basketball in the morning. And so usually around like 5 to 6, somewhere in there, I'll go to the gym and I'll play basketball, run through different skills and stuff like that. Come home. I don't eat anything till 12.
Wow.
So I come home and I work. Usually I set like a lot of meetings in the morning just because like that's when you have the most energy. By the way, I don't even like meetings at the end of the day, so I try not even schedule much of any meetings.
Yeah.
And then 75 hard, right? Time to do your cycle workout, 45 minutes, usually in the middle of the day. I'll go for a run. And that's probably where you see that picture, which is kind of funny because I've had a lot of people message me like, why are you still posting that? You know? And then usually I'll work again till maybe dinner time. But I mean, really, it's just a full day, right? But it's very productive, So when you kind of split up your days like that, I can be productive during all those hours, versus kind of just like BS and doing whatever, So that's kind of like what a work day looks like.
So would you say that you block out certain hours of the day just for like sprinting for productive time? So like you have right after your initial workout with basketball in the morning, then you have like maybe 3 to 4 hours before your second workout, come back and you have another 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously I'll eat lunch around that second workout. But I definitely block out those times. Like I'll block out that morning. I'll block out that afternoon from 12 to 1:30, somewhere in there. So I might catch up on the phone like outside, but like I try to block that out. So I'm not doing anything else other than focusing on those things during those times. Another thing that I've tried recently is going down to the office for all state meetings because I feel like I'm a little more absent than I should be. And so, what I've tried out is going down to the office down there, having it set up down there 2 days out of a week, and obviously working on agency stuff there, but also being present and being focused on the concrete coding side as well. So that's kind of, it's kind of hard to like sit in one area and do tons of things, that's just kind of what my thoughts are on that, especially when you're dealing with a company that has employees locally, that has people in an office. And so I think it's always nice to be present in that regard too. So I've set that aside, or set that as a goal to do, is to at least go down there 1 or 2 times per week. Like I said, I got a desk down there and I set up, so
Got it.
that'll work.
One thing I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs don't really talk about, and something I would love to kind of maybe even ask you about, is mental health. As an entrepreneur, we're constantly faced with challenges. Every day is like putting out fires. What have you been doing, as far as your mental health is concerned, or, dealing with stress and, also the idea of comparing yourself to others, and it's very easy to kind of get into that process.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, comparing yourself to others is like the biggest rat race I've ever seen, because, and I'll still do it, and it's just ridiculous. But it certainly isn't healthy, because you start to realize, oh, I'm not going fast enough, or I'm not doing this, or I need to do that, blah, blah, blah. Like there's so many things that happen when you go down that hole. Like, I don't know if you battle that, but it certainly isn't fun. As far as like mental health and kind of how you deal with some of that stuff, I'm fine with how my schedule is. I don't have, like, let's say I were to have a family, like I think it would be more structured, if you will, or just had more obligations. I think it would be more something to say there. But I certainly, like, if it's an off day, or if it's something going on or whatever, like I'll certainly turn on my phone on this little moon icon where it's like where you get a call and it just instantly goes to voicemail, and then just get some time without your phone, And I think that helps tremendously, just because like even this last week, right? I had and this is around Christmas, I had my phone literally on that moon icon, or do not disturb, whatever it's called, for a week and a half. Like, I just want to look at my emails at the end of the day, and that's what I want to do. I don't want to jump on the phone all day long. And let me tell you what, it was the most peaceful time ever, and I'm sure I can actually start doing stuff like that during the day, like blocking out 3 hours and just having it on that for 3 hours, and being able to focus on certain projects or whatever, because you know how it is. I'll get a phone call, and then all of a sudden I start working on something else, and then all of a sudden it's 12 p.m., So I think that helps tremendously in my case,
I like that. Yeah. I feel like, it really gives some context, because we just all face different challenges, and there's always a process that you can kind of utilize. We'll go ahead and move on to the rapid fire session, where, just feel free to kind of, answer questions with a short response, or explain if you'd like. First question is, what is your favorite Sports team.
Arizona Cardinals.
Arizona Cardinals. All right. Dogs or cats?
I like dogs. I don't have one currently. I did, but I certainly will get one in the future here.
What do you do on a weekend out normally?
I'll probably just spend more time with family, right? Just because the weekdays get busy sometimes, but I'll spend time with family. I'll go home for, like, my family's in town. I'll go home for dinner, and not bring my laptop and just have some quality time. But I also like to do certain things, So for example, like I might go to the ice rink or, do something that I usually wouldn't do on a weekly basis, just to kind of get away from the computer, get away from technology sometimes and spend some quality time,
If you could spend the day with anyone in the world, who would it be?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's particular anyone I would want to. Maybe I take that back, actually. Let's do it. Maybe owner or CEO of Neighborly Brands. That'll be nice.
Okay.
I'd love to spend the day with him, see what his day is like, and just kind of pick his brain. You know what I'm saying? I think that would be really cool.
Oh yeah, manifest that, man. Most memorable travel story.
This is probably going to Banff, Canada. Just amazing. I mean, the Rocky Mountains are amazing. Have you been there?
I've been to like Vancouver and overall in that area, going all the way up to northern Alaska. So I've seen it. It's
yeah, no, it's great. I love that place. Obviously this time around, I kind of changed my perspective on it because there's a lot of restrictions and stuff like that, but it was certainly, amazing to go there. There's so much to do. There's hockey, there's skiing. I have family up there. It's just an overall amazing place. I like, I don't like too touristy spots, but that one was just really fun because there's a lot to do. And I was up there with friends this one time I'm remembering here. I don't know. Like if you take Banff, there's ski hill, like there's probably like 5 or 6 ski hills within an hour, and so it's just an amazing place,
Yeah. Who was the last person you texted and what was it?
Right now? Can I look?
Yeah.
This is funny. It was a realtor. So quick backstory. I don't have any real estate. Obviously, I'm 19, but I want to get a place. Like I want to get something. Mainly because, sure, like rental prices are going up and up and up. You might as well just get a place, right? And so I started looking the other week, a couple months ago or whatever, and around the holidays, usually listings come down, but then right after the holidays, they start going up. So it's kind of what the text was about.
Got it. What has been your most impactful life advice?
I probably mentioned it a couple of times. You probably guessed it throughout this session here. Just not focusing on a lot of things, right? Because I'll give you perspective on this. Like if you're all, like if your head is telling you, hey, look, I got to create this company, you're going to be spinning wheels in all of them. You're going to be ripping your hair out in all of them. And so I think focusing on one thing, two things, if they work together in some way, shape, or form, is enough. Because if you want to be great in any businesses, what I was told is you got to have extreme focus on things. And it's just too much for the human brain to focus on 40 different things and expect all of them to be successful, And so I think it takes extreme focus on one thing or two things if they work concurrently. That's kind of how I roll by. So I hope that helps if somebody's out there and they're focusing on a lot of things, just kind of opening perspective on them, because I'll tell you what, if I was trying to do painting and HVAC and all these different things, like it would just be very aggressive, you would have less time to do certain things, and also you'd probably not be so successful in them,
I love that. I think, a lot of entrepreneurs get caught in the trap of just, looking at what everyone else is doing and thinking that they can also do that as well.
Shiny object syndrome.
Exactly.
It's massive. If somebody has shiny object syndrome and they're always on to the next thing, I've seen tons and tons of people go down this, and it doesn't work. Trust me. If you focus 5 months, it's the same thing as focusing 2 months, 3 months, 5 months on something specifically and just moving on, because they think it's not working or whatever it is. Like all of that is all relatable. You got to have extreme focus on something that you see being at least like 2 to 3 years, because that's not exit style. You know what I'm saying? Like if you could build something in 4 years, you can exit, then good. But if you want to build something and have it forever, then build a legacy, But again, you got to have focus if you even want to sell. Nobody's going to buy something if you didn't focus on that.
Agreed. All right, Marko. Well, I appreciate you for being on, my guy. It's been quite a learning session just for myself. And I know you're going to do great things. And, already in the last few months I've known you, I love your work ethic. So appreciate you again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure knowing you and pleasure learning from you as well. I know you're big into e-commerce. That's big. And appreciate you bringing me on.
Hell yeah.
Thanks for listening to Breaking It Down with Yogin Patel, your one-stop shop for business success and personal growth. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. Share with a friend if you found value in today's episode. And for more information or to connect with Yogin, subscribe to our newsletter and check out Yogin on Instagram and TikTok at YoginPat. We'll see you next time.